So let's move on to the next question. Jen, I'm going to direct this one at you. What have been some of your experimentation success stories? I know you love data and analyzing the results. What are some of the examples that you can share with us?
Sure. So I already touched a little bit on this new homepage design story, and I would wish that I had more results, but we're about to launch 3 new websites where we followed this, and we haven't had the opportunity to get them out there and get those results back, but we're very happy with how they're coming. I have done some SEO testing, which is frankly a lot harder. Because what we have to do is sort of match pair testing, where we have 2 similarly performing pages and we make a change on one of them and we leave the other and we see if they increased or decreased. But I'm a full believer from an SEO perspective and having complete content and on a topic and making sure that you're answering all the questions. And again, by doing this and then, comparing it against unaltered content, definitely seeing, 500-600% increases in traffic by doing these things. And then I just kind of wanted to touch on one other comment about like building a team. Resources are always going to be a challenge. I know that because I work with nonprofits and associations, the resources are even tighter, but it still can be a struggle to get the resources that you need, because just because you buy the big shiny tool doesn't mean that you can test everything. Sometimes you need to actually change how something works. So you're going to need developer resources and so forth. And then the last thing is research. I really think, I know in the early 2000s when I first started testing, really like probably 2008, 2010, we were just throwing spaghetti on the wall of like, hey, let's test this color, this button change, right? But now I firmly believe that you need to be doing research to identify barriers to conversion and then be testing more persuasive ways of getting people to move forward. And if you can really focus on listening and that research, you're going to create much better tests.
Right. So Tani, you had shared an example of a failure that you learned from, but do you have some success stories that you could share of things that you've adjusted and edited that have made a big impact?
Yeah, so a lot. So stop me when I talk for too long. Since we talked about the universities earlier, I'll go into that for 1 second. So in my past life, I used to teach at a university and I acted as the director of marketing for the College of Business there. And the dean noticed that in online courses, after about 4 weeks, people stopped logging in, right? They would still take the test, but they would stop logging in and kind of participating. Time on page for reading the articles and research was all lower. We didn't have any fancy tools. So what we did is we just found a course that had 2 different cohorts taught by 2 different professors. And in one, we helped the professor create video modules versus written content. Right. And that was easy to see. Can we track people's engagement with the video content versus something else? So a really rudimentary experiment, if you will, but we saw an increase in grades. We saw an increase in retention. They came back for future semesters, right? So all of those things I think are pretty big wins. I also think it depends on what we're talking about when we say experimentation, because we can go really complicated. Right. One of the things we do on our sites right now is AI recommendations and product recommendations. And that's, a little bit more of a set it and forget it, although we don't ever really forget about it. We have to change up the strategy behind those. But even with that on our B2B site, we implemented that in 2021, and our average orders with AI recommendation products on them are 45% larger. And we're talking, without, they're already $1,000 average order value. So this is really exponential growth that we would not have seen otherwise. In emails, right? Emails is a super easy way to start experimenting. If you need a taste for it, or if your company isn't doing it now, A/B testing emails gives everyone that little tease that they don't want to put down anymore. One of the other things we do is we actually have another Optimizely program called ODP, Optimizely Data Platform, formerly known as Zaius or Zaius. That's a really robust tool that we use. But one of the things it does is it tells us, are we manufacturing our bestsellers or your popular content? Right. We put a lot of time and energy into certain aspects of our businesses, and right, they're almost man-made popularity, man-made bestsellers. But this actually tells us hidden gems. So it's testing a visibility score versus a KPI score to see, are we actually pushing the right content? And if we got behind something different without us having to do all the manual legwork, if we were to get behind something different, would we get to where we needed to get to faster? And that's where, again, where I say, if anything we can do to build capacity, I think really early on, we said that Sullivan's manages 5 different brands, B2B and B2C. We focus on people like True Value and Ace Hardware might come onto our site, but then also Magnolia Market and Target and Wayfair buyers. And those are very different people. So if I can identify quickly how to convert them, which we have been, those are always going to be really big wins for us. And I'll stop there so I don't monopolize time.
Yeah. Well, I think you make a good point about kind of those hidden gem pieces and looking for those, because I know in our own content, we produce kind of with the audience in mind and kind of try to reach out with those things. Much to Taylor, our head of marketing's chagrin, some of our more technical articles are some of our more popular, and so we've learned to embrace that over time and find ways to use those. But it is really about looking at not the way you want it to be, but what's really happening.